What if I can get a cheaper cost per acquisition? Won't I be making more money? And the answer is yes. Well, yes, but. Are you one of those founders who doesn't actually set a marketing budget? You just spend. Like, if the ads are working, you spend more, and if they're not, you pull back. I get it, and I see this all the time. In fact, I was working with a founder who told me exactly that. We just spend as long as the performance is good, and then stop if we see it drop. And the problem was, they never really knew if they were overspending or missing out on growth. One thing that was true though, they were stuck at a revenue ceiling. And this approach was what was keeping them there. I'm going to show you a different way. One that's easy and where you don't have to guess how much you should spend. I'm Jason Chappell, founder of Defiant and creator of eCommerce Growth Made Easy. I've helped founders from scrappy startups to stores doing over 50 million fix this exact problem. And today, I'll show you how you can do it too. I'm going to show you how to set a budget that actually fits your goals, how to split that budget between acquisition and retention, and how to keep yourself safe with guardrails so you know when to push and when to pull back. So if you've ever worried about whether you're spending too much or not enough, we're going to fix that today. Now, when you don't set a marketing budget, I know you think you're keeping things flexible. I know you're telling yourself, I'll just spend more if it's working and less if it isn't, which I guess kind of sounds logical, but when you've taken this approach, by doubling down on good performance, I'm guessing you usually experience a drop in performance afterwards. Something that leaves you guessing and wondering what's changed. Is it the platform, the algorithm, your creatives? The reality is, it's probably none of those. You've just pulled sales forward from the following period because you were chasing sales this month. And this leaves you stuck on the hamster wheel of chasing sales rather than building a steady stream of buyers who you're nurturing through your buying cycle. And this is where having a clear budget is going to allow you to scale with confidence. So let's start by setting a budget that fits your goals. The first step's simple. You need to decide what you actually want. And what I mean by that is, are you aiming for profitability? Are you aiming for growth at all costs? Or do you want a balance where you're willing to trade a bit of profit for steady growth? Whatever you decide, your budget should be a reflection of that. If you want profit, you'll need to stay tighter. Like every dollar you spend on acquisition has to bring back significantly more. If you want aggressive, as long as you're confident customers are going to come back. And if you're looking for balance, you'll want to sit somewhere in between. So here's an example. I worked with a supplements brand that had a really strong subscription model. They knew customers came back 2, 3, sometimes even 4 times a year. So they were willing to spend all of their first order contribution just to win the customer, which put them in a really strong position as they could afford to outspend their competitors for the same customer, knowing profit would come later. It also stopped them attracting all the tire kickers, the people who were low value and unlikely to spend much, leaving them for their competitors. Compare that with an accessories brand I worked with, where repeat order rates were lower. For them, the goal had to be first order profitability. Otherwise, they were never making any cash. They had to work really hard to acquire a customer as cheaply as possible, which actually took a load more work and effort than being able to go after high value customers. Anyway, 2 different businesses, 2 actually very similar budgets, but 2 very different approaches. And it all comes down to your goals. So your first question is to decide what matters most to you right now. Profit, growth, or balance? And the second question is, how do you actually turn that into a number? I've got a simple process you can use. And if you checked out the episode on building a forecast, you'll recognize this. If you haven't, go back and catch that one. It's called the 5-step plan to grow your e-commerce store without wasting money. I'll drop the link in the description. We're going to start with your revenue target. That's the number you're aiming for this year or this quarter. From this, you're going to subtract your COGS, or your cost of goods, to give you your gross margin. Next, subtract your fixed costs, salaries, rent, software, warehousing, the kind of stuff you pay no matter what. Then subtract your variable costs, like transaction fees, shipping and packaging, the things you only pay when someone makes a transaction. And finally, subtract your desired profit, because if you leave it till last, it will vanish. What you'll have left is going to be your marketing budget. That's the pot you've got to work with. So here's an example to make it real. Let's say your revenue goal is 1 million. COGS eat up 300k. Fixed costs are another 200,000. Variable fees, 100k. And let's say you want to make 100k in profit. That leaves you with 300,000 for your marketing budget. That's the money you've got to spend to acquire and retain customers, pay for technology like your email service provider, and pay agencies or staff salaries who are directly involved in marketing. So now you know the size of the pot. Let's talk about how we can split that between acquisition and retention. On average, it's about 5 times cheaper to retain a customer than acquire a new one. So as a starting point, for every $5 you put into acquisition, you'd only need to put $1 into retention. Here's how I want you to think about it. Acquisition is expensive, but you need it to grow. Retention is cheaper, but it only works if you've already acquired customers. And the balance between them depends on your stage of growth and your goals. If you're early stage, you'll need to lean harder on acquisition. You've got to fill the tank before you can invest too heavily in retention. Think of a split of about 80-20, with the bulk of that going to acquisition. But if you're further along and you've already got a customer base, you'll want a healthier split, because keeping people buying again and again is where the magic happens. You'll want to aim for something more like 40 to 50% of your revenue coming from repeat customers. So the question becomes, what's the right split for you? And how much budget should you allocate to acquisition? And how much should you allocate to retention? That's where tools like the budget calculator I use with my brands come in. It shows them exactly what their split should look like based on their forecast and their individual goals. And you can find this and more inside my community on School. The link to this is in the description and it's free to get started. But let's run through it using my 300k budget from before with a 60-40 split of acquisition and retention. My revenue goal was 1 million, and with my split, I'm expecting 40% or 400,000 of that to come from repeat customers. So with the knowledge that acquisition costs more than retention by a factor of 5 to 1, the split on my 300,000 budget would look like 50k going to retention and 250k going to acquisition. The only problem with that would be that would give me a 50-50 split of orders coming from new customers and repeat customers. So in order to get that down to 40%, I need to reduce my retention budget by 20% to get that down from 50 to 40% and move that from retention across to my acquisition budget. So my actual budget to hit my 1 million goal with my 300k marketing budget would be 40k to retention and 260k to acquisition. And the beauty of this is you can apply the same process no matter what your retention target is. If you want more returning customers, shift the percentage up. If you're early stage and retention doesn't really exist yet, skew it towards acquisition. The key here is that you're not guessing. You're aligning actual spend with strategy. Now, even with the split nailed, you're going to need guardrails for your spend. These guardrails are going to keep you on track. let you know what good looks like, and let you know whether to put the hammer down or rein your spending back in. These numbers are going to mean you can make real-time decisions and not look back at your numbers at the end of each week or month and wish you'd done something different. There are 2 guardrails you're going to need. A target customer acquisition cost. This is what you want to spend to acquire a customer. And a break-even customer acquisition cost. The line in the sand where you're not making anything, but you're not losing either. Let's break each one down. Starting with your target customer acquisition cost. The way to calculate it is simple. We're going to take the total acquisition marketing budget and divide it by the number of new customers you expect to generate. You can work this out by taking the amount of revenue you expect to generate and dividing that by your average order value. So using my example numbers, I expect to hit 600,000 generated from new customers across the year. To make the maths easy, let's say my average order value is $60. In order to hit 600,000 in revenue at $60 per order, I'd need to acquire 10,000 customers. I have an acquisition budget of 260,000, which I divide by my 10,000 orders, giving me a target acquisition cost of $26. Next, I need to work out my break-even customer acquisition cost. In order to do this, we're going to need to go back to our original calculations and remove profit from the equation. In my example, this would add an additional 100,000 to the marketing budget, which I'll allocate 60% to acquisition and 40% to retention. So this would bring my total new customer acquisition budget to 320,000 from 260,000. I now do the exact same calculation as in the previous step to work out my break-even customer acquisition cost. So that's 600,000 in revenue divided by my average order value of $60, giving me 10,000 orders. I now divide my break-even acquisition budget of 320,000 by my 10,000 orders, giving me a break-even customer acquisition cost of $32. So you can see from my example that ideally you're going to be hitting your target customer acquisition cost of $26, but you have some breathing room that you can go up to $32 cost per acquisition before you start losing money. And remember, these are averages. So some months you'll be running slightly over and others slightly under. But as long as on average you stick within these, you should be hitting your goals. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. What if I can get a cheaper cost per acquisition? Won't I be making more money? And the answer is yes. Well, yes, but like so many things in life, you get what you pay for. Cheap customers are usually cheap for a reason. You absolutely can pay less for a customer, but they need to deliver the same customer lifetime value as the more expensive customer in order for it to be worth it. So, in my view, this is a short-term solution that keeps you on the hamster wheel and impacts your growth potential. Whereas, if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, you get a different perspective. You only pay the customer acquisition cost once. But if a more expensive customer comes back more often, or spends more, or both, then you're missing out on a huge potential upside in order to penny pinch here. So, if you can get the same quality of customer who has the same customer lifetime value, then go for it. But if you only attract low value customers, you'll always be competing with everyone else who's looking for low cost customers. If you're willing to pay more for a high value customer, it will mean you can outspend your competitors and stop worrying about where the next sale is going to come from. If you're finding that you're getting through your ad budget with a customer acquisition cost below what you're expecting, while still attracting high value customers, it might be time to start expanding your targeting to reach a wider audience. These will be people who aren't quite ready to buy yet, but who you can build brand awareness with so that when they are ready, you're the brand they come to. So let's recap. Step 1. First, you need to decide how much profit you want to make and protect it. Step 2, you're going to subtract your costs and whatever's left is going to be your marketing budget. Step 3, Split that budget between acquisition and retention. Remember, retention is cheaper, but it still costs money. And step 4, put your guardrails in place so that you know that you're never over or underspending, because they can be equally dangerous. And that's how you take control of your marketing budget, because the alternative will always have you wondering if you're spending too much or not enough. And you'll stay stuck at that plateau that you just can't seem to break through. But when you define your budgets properly, you're the one in control. You know exactly what you can afford, where your limits are, and how to scale without burning cash. So here's your action for today. Take 30 minutes, open up a spreadsheet, and run through these steps with your own numbers. You'll be amazed how much clarity it gives you. And if you want the calculators that make this even easier, they're all inside my e-commerce growth made easy community on School. It's free to get started, and the link's in the description. So go build your budget, set your guardrails, and take back control of your growth. And I'll see you in the next one.